All right. You know, it's somewhat bittersweet to me to think that exactly a year ago from today, we were all frantically buying toilet paper and pasta from our local grocery stores, right? And I bring this up not to tell you all that we are living in this unprecedented time. I think if you're anything like me, you're pretty exhausted of hearing that by now, and it's kind of annoying at this point, right? I bring this up to remind you all of how much better things have gotten in just a year. Right, we started in this place of uncertainty, and we were really scared about what the future held. But we adjusted, and we adapted. And now we're in a place where we can gather at events like this and accomplish the very thing that the TED organization aims to achieve. And that's just to share ideas and stories with each other. Now, obviously, none of this could have happened tonight without the collaboration of dozens of amazing people I've gotten to meet. So I want to give a huge, warm thank you to the Student Involvement and Leadership Center, the College of Science, USU Student Media, the School of Graduate Studies, and all the wonderful people I've met in tonight's technical crew and the ticketing office. They are really the ones who got tonight to happen, and maybe a little bit of me, right? But I think none of you came here to hear me talk, right? So let's get on with the show.
Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here. In this video, you see American figure skater Caroline Zhang performing a so-called pearl spin, one of her signature moves. Quite amazing, isn't it? The dynamics of spinning tops is one of the major themes in classical mechanics. The problem is, to describe the motion of a rigid rotating body, one point of it is being kept fixed. As you can see, spinning tops come in many different shapes and sizes. And the way they react to our Earth gravity field can be quite surprising. Look at this, a spinning gyroscope seemingly defying our Earth gravity. Or a so-called tippy top, effortlessly just flipping around. In the late 18th century, two mathematicians, Leonhard Euler on the right and Joseph-Louis Lagrange on the left, were able to solve the equations of motions that govern the movement of two kinds of spinning tops, which since then have been associated with their names. They are called the Euler top and the Lagrange top. However, the motion of a spinning, rotating body of just arbitrary size and shape is non-integrable, meaning chaotic. However, this woman, Sofia Kovalevskaya, found a third and final case that can be described precisely. This is now called the Kovalevskaya top. Now, there are many shapes that qualify as being a Kovalevskaya top. For example, a figure skater doing a particularly elegant spin. However, the simplest example of a Kovalevskaya top you see right here. It's constructed from those two equal masses on the side, a third equal mass on the top, and a ring of twice the mass of each of those cylinders. It has a center of mass that is located on that vertical axis just above that ring. Describing the movement in this case, in many respects, is the most difficult one. Here you see in the next clip a visualization of what the movement of this Kovalevskaya top would look like. However, in the real world, you would actually have to build a frame and some sort of suspension that would keep that one point fixed in space, but allow for the free rotation of the rest of it. This is what it looks like. And you can see the motion, the movement can be quite complicated. Now, if this last case, as I said, is in many respects the most complicated one, and Sofia Kovalevskaya was the one who figured it out, how come we so rarely have heard about her? Whereas Euler and Lagrange probably make an appearance in every other college-level math class. This is even more surprising, since Sofia Kovalevskaya was this amazing person. Born in Moscow in 1850, she dedicated her life to mathematical research, which was very uncommon at this time. She even agreed to a marriage of convenience with a Russian radical, only to be allowed to leave the country and study math, which back then was only possible abroad. In 1889, she was given a full professorship of mathematics at Stockholm University, the first woman in Europe in modern times to hold such a position. 1 year before, she had won this very prestigious prize of the Paris Academy of Science for her complete solution of the spinning top that I showed you earlier. Now, despite all of these achievements, she was never made a full-fledged member of the Russian Academy of Science or offered a professorship in her own country. And in Western Europe, her contributions were belittled as insignificant examples and as being mostly derivative of the thoughts of the big, I might add, male mathematicians of her time. Unfortunately, Sofia died at the age of only 41 from influenza, and her role, her pioneering role as female mathematician, largely became forgotten until the end of the 20th century. Now, why is that? I think part of it is the way we think about mathematical research achievements. In 2008, in his address to the American Mathematical Society, late physicist and mathematician Freeman Dyson spoke about how some mathematicians are birds and some mathematicians are frogs. This became famous almost instantly. Here you see his birds and frogs depicted on the cover of a book containing his selected works. Now, when we say some mathematicians are birds and some mathematicians are frogs, we rarely mean that literally, right? Instead, what we mean is that the mathematical birds fly high in the air, serving the broad vistas of mathematics, whereas the mathematical frogs live down in the mud, just seeing the close-up beauty of the flower in front of them and hopping from flower to flower. Now, Freeman Dyson resolutely was a frog and said that some of his best friends were birds. He also emphasized that for scientific discovery and progress, both birds and frogs are needed. But if we are really honest, when it comes to remembering the names in mathematics, we often favor the birds. You know, the big names in mathematics that have entire school of mathematical thinking named after them. Sofia Kovalevskaya was certainly a mathematical frog, and her complete solution of the Kovalevskaya, what we now call Kovalevskaya top, was a beautiful, you might say, frog's work. But we should be careful not to equate this kind of work with being less important. In fact, her work, what critics called just doing examples, 150 years today, still proves to be absolutely groundbreaking and inspiring. Sofia Kovalevskaya, for the first time, established common features between very different fields of mathematics and physics and united them. Fields that are the focus of big research groups at major universities around the country. Fields like algebraic geometry, differential equations, mathematical physics. So yes, you can think of the Kovalevskaya top as yet another strange toy and her solution as just an example. But this toy and this solution might prove absolutely critical when it comes to understanding the cutting-edge science of the 21st century, like a new state of matter known as Bose-Einstein condensate. That state was discovered in the late 20th century and might hold the key to engineering the advanced materials of the 21st century, like very precise motion sensors or so-called high-temperature superconductors. Now, if we go back to the Kovalevskaya top, you see that it can actually move in many different ways. At low energy, you can just have this typical pendulum motion, whereas at high energies, gravity is no longer dominant and you get those stable rotations. But if you spin it just right, then you can also get this typical precessional motion that you might remember from your childhood spinning toy top. As I said, the Kovalevskaya top is in many respects the most difficult because it encapsulates all those different cases and their ranges of motion. Now, the absolute novel point about Kovalevskaya's work was that she described all these different possibilities and their ranges of motion using geometry. How do you get to geometry here? Well, you can start by recording the position of a fixed reference point the way the Kovalevskaya top sees it as it moves around. This is what it might look like. Be careful, it might make you dizzy. Now, the point here is that the trace of this external reference point in the internal frame of the spinning top draws an interesting curve onto a sphere. It creates some interesting geometry. However, this geometry is not quite enough. It doesn't contain quite enough data to really describe the motion of the Kovalevskaya top completely. For that, you have to go to an extended geometry, a theoretical construct that works in the background and that encodes, next to the visible ranges of motion, also other important physical parameters like the velocity. Now, this abstract geometry behind the scene is difficult to describe. It actually turns out it's four-dimensional, so you can't fully visualize it. But what you can do is you can take some clever projections of it into our three-dimensional space. Here you see such a projection of a geometry, and this geometry now encodes the ranges of motion of the Kovalevskaya top. So describing the movement of a Kovalevskaya top, thanks to SOFIA, translates into describing those associated abstract geometries. Now you might say, those geometries look crazy, but from a mathematical point of view, they are actually much easier to describe. In a way, what we started doing is thinking about the problem more abstractly, in a way without getting dizzy from trying to follow the crazy movement of the Kovalevskaya top. Now, in the modern laboratories of our time, scientists don't just look at spinning tops. They also do other cool stuff. For example, they take gases of bosons and cool them down in temperature to almost absolute zero. That is about minus 273 degrees Celsius. At these temperatures, gases form a new state of matter known as Bose-Einstein condensate. In the sequence of pictures, you see a record of one of the first Bose-Einstein condensates ever created in a lab, represented by that blue peak right in the middle. Now, for Bose-Einstein condensate, quantum mechanics rules their world, and the peculiar phenomena of quantum mechanics become visible macroscopically. Now, in recent years, scientists have not only learned how to make those Bose-Einstein condensates from different substances, they also started performing experiments on these Bose-Einstein condensates themselves. For example, you can take a Bose-Einstein condensate and put it in what we call a rotating magnetic trap. Now, if you spin that rotating magnetic trap really fast, the Bose-Einstein condensate starts behaving like a Kovalevskaya top. So this experiment was actually done at the Center for Ultra-Cold Atoms at MIT very recently. In the first clip, you see that the rotating Bose-Einstein condensate, rather than pouring off to all sides like your overflowing coffee mug, it rather behaves like a pendulum mounted on a merry-go-round. Look at the second clip, where the whole situation is shown in the internal frame of the rotating Bose-Einstein condensate. A discrete line is forming, which becomes thinner and thinner, but eventually maintains a finite size. What's going on here can be accurately described using the same methods Kovalevskaya used to describe her complete solution of the spinning top. And there you have it. Kovalevskaya demonstrated for the first time that a dynamical problem, like a spinning top, can be described using geometric structure. Yes, it was in an example. Kovalevskaya was a mathematical frog. However, her work united different fields of mathematics and physics. And here on the right, you see the cover page of the famous article that won her those famous awards. We should remember Sofia Kovalevskaya as a mathematical frog that saw these amazing connections between mathematics and physics and united them, inspiring not only figure skater, but also the cutting-edge science of today. This is quite something, and in fact, it's something no bird had ever seen. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marisela Martinez Cola. Don't be afraid of the R. It's basically the D sound, so Ma-Di-Sela. I grew up in Battle Creek, Michigan, the cereal capital of the world, where you will find Kellogg's headquarters. My mother is from Reynosa, Mexico, and my father is from Donna, Texas. I have 11 aunts and uncles and 47 first cousins at last count. And this is just on my mom's side. I haven't even tried counting on my papi's side yet. I'd be exhausted. I'm the oldest of 3 girls and the first in my family to attend college. I married my best friend, and we have a son who lights up our life every day. Finally, I am a very proud Chicana from Michigan. So I'm a Michicana. Now, almost all of my family, both sides, moved to Battle Creek. To this day, I believe that we were singularly responsible for the rise in the Latino population that year. Aside from my family, I didn't really have examples of Latinidad outside of my home. That was until I discovered a remarkable TV show. Sesame Street. I loved Sesame Street. Grover was my favorite, which is probably why I love the color blue. But what I loved the most about it was the diversity of Sesame Street. Not just the blue and green and yellow residents, but Gordon, Luis, Maria, Bob, and Mr. Hooper. It was the first time I saw someone that looked like my family on TV. I mean, I had a Tío Luis, and my tia's name, my aunt's name was Maria. I mean, come on, wow. You can imagine that this blew my little 5-year-old mind. I didn't realize how much that TV show influenced me until about a year later. Not a year later, till I got to college. Yeah, that'd be like 6 years old. So let's fast forward to 1993 at the University of Michigan. It was the first time I had a group of Chicano friends who were just like me. I was part of a multicultural club in my residence hall. It was a very amazing and validating time in my life. Then it came time to select a major. I went to this thing called a course catalog that listed every course taught at the University of Michigan. I had no clue how to pick a major, so I just circled all the classes I wanted to take, and the most circles were in psychology and African American African studies. Leave it to me, the overachiever of the family, to pick 2, not just 1 major. Later on, my friends and I were kind of sitting around chilling and talking about our majors. When I told them that one of my majors was African American African Studies, my more militant friends were like, "What? Why aren't you majoring in Latino studies? Why would you choose African American Studies? You're a Latina, you're a Chicana." When I told my family, they said, "What do you think? You're black?" And this wasn't about being anti-black. For my friends, it was a matter of demonstrating pride in my cultural identity and learning all the things that my K-12 education kept from me. My family thought it was a rejection of my Mexican heritage, a rejection of them and their struggle to get to the US, but that wasn't the case at all. So when I struggled to try to explain it to them, believe it or not, that old Sesame Street song popped into my head. Who are the people in your neighborhood? And so I explained, look, I know my house. I know my culture. I know it inside and out. I've lived in my house for 18 years. I love my house. I love tamales at Christmas, having rice and beans at almost every meal, listening to the corridos, hearing stories about Pancho Villa, speaking Spanglish. I love my house. But now I want to get to know my neighbors. So I majored in African American Studies, and I got to know some beautiful, amazing neighbors. My classes and incredible professors filled my heart and mind and spirit with Black history, Black art, activism, and literature. I received messages of pain and brilliance and excellence against all odds. So I thought to myself, if this is what I discover when I meet my Black neighbors, so to speak, what will I find when I meet my other Latino, Asian American, and Native American Indigenous neighbors? So I dedicated my professional career to multicultural affairs and began populating my neighborhood in my mind and heart with Black, Latinx, Asian American, and Indigenous art, history, and literature. As I learned, I saw connections, beautiful, inspiring, heart-wrenching connections. For example, when I read the autobiography of Malcolm X, I was completely inspired. But learning about Malcolm X helped me to connect him to one of my Chicano heroes, Rodolfo Corky Gonzalez. He was called the fist of the Chicano movement. And that led me to learn about Yuri Kochiyama, an amazing Japanese-American activist who actually worked alongside Malcolm X and was there with him at the time of his death. And later, I learned about Mary Bravebird, a writer and a member of the American Indian movement. They all taught me to love, protect, and fight for my neighborhood. Reading I Too Am America by poet Langston Hughes made me hungry to read Audre Lorde, a self-described Black lesbian mother warrior poet. And after that, I learned about Gloria Anzaldúa, whose book Borderlands made me feel seen. And then there was Janice Mirikitani, a Japanese-American poet who taught me that I am loved and worthy. And Joy Harjo, a Native American poet who inspired me to remember my history. Their words helped me find my words. So finally, this deep connection, this deep desire for connections influenced my research and teaching as a professor. Now, I know you can't put an equal sign between all of these experiences. You don't want to do that. But there are enough similarities that you can put the mathematical simile line between them. So I research school desegregation. Most people know about Brown versus Board of Education, the famous case that ended the legal practice of separate but equal. But I studied law, and I knew there had to be cases involving Mexican American, Indigenous, and Asian American plaintiffs. Sure enough, after some research, I found that in 1947, 7 years before Brown, there was Mendez v. Westminster, a case involving Mexican American families fighting for educational equality. 30 years before Brown, there was Alice Piper in Piper v. Big Pine. She and her family filed a lawsuit to allow the Native American Paiute children to attend one of the local white schools in Big Pine, California. Finally, almost 70 years before Brown, in 1885, there was Tate versus Hurley, a case where a Chinese-American family argued that not allowing their daughter, Mamie Tate, to attend the white school closest to her home was unjust, immoral, and racially prejudicial. These 4 brave schoolgirls, Linda Brown, Sylvia Mendez, Alice Piper, and Mamie Tate, gave me the privilege of sharing my beautiful neighborhood with others in my forthcoming book. And my students and I are working on an interactive digital map for social studies teachers. I love the idea of young Black, Latinx, Asian American, Indigenous children clicking on this map and seeing themselves as history makers. And hopefully, I'd like to be able to eventually have a children's book. Okay, Dr. MC, that's what my students call me. So what's your point? So I'm here to ask you, who are the people in your neighborhood? Here in Utah, it's very easy to say, I grew up in an all-white neighborhood. I went to a really white school. I attended a predominantly white church. I hear this a lot from my students. And to them I say, your physical neighborhood may not be diverse, but the neighborhood in your mind and heart is ever growing. Get to know your neighborhood. And this means filling your life with books and movies and art and music and documentaries, all of these things that represent all of the phenomenal neighbors that you have yet to meet. It's all there, especially in this digital age, y'all. Y'all can be able to figure something out, all right? First, though, you gotta start small, right? So if you like classical music, just Google African American composers, and the first thing that pops up is 9 Black composers who changed the course of classical music. If you love reading science fiction, Google Latino science fiction writers, and there you'll see a link to 5 books by Latino authors that will satisfy any sci-fi junkie. They're there. I promise you, I Googled them right before this talk. Look, there's no reason to say I never knew. There's no reason to say I never had the opportunity. Even here in Utah, there is such beautiful diversity here too. Your neighbors are there, y'all, and they are fascinating. I got to know my neighbors, and I learned that true unity comes when you are as transformed by your neighbors' experiences as they are by yours. Thank you.
Hey everybody, my name is Jay Warren, and to my right, Nate Waite plays guitar, and we're gonna sing a few songs for you guys, so hopefully you enjoy them. Summertime anthem coming and your girlfriend's told ya you should take some time, get to know me. Take some time, get to know me. Young gun from the east side, put my best foot forward. Tell your boyfriend I'm taking over. Boyfriend, I'm taking over. Taking my time on the first day. I know that you won't make it easy. Tell me you want it, tell me you need it. Tell me it's alright, tell me you feel it. Know what you want in the worst way. Turn to me all you can hurt me. Tell me you want it, tell me you need it. Tell me it's alright how I see it. I see me, I see you. I know one thing we could do. We can go slow, 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 slow. I see me, I see you. I know one thing we could do. We can go slow, 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 slow. From left to right, go 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 slow. I don't mind if we take it slower. Can't be too forward. If I really want you, I'm gonna take my time. I don't mind if we take it slower. Can't be too forward. If I really want you, I'm gonna make you mine. Taking my time on the first day. I know that you won't make it easy. Tell me you want it, tell me you need it. Tell me it's alright, tell me you feel it. Know what you want in the worst way. Turn to me all you can hurt me. Tell me you want it, tell me you need it. Tell me it's alright how I see it. I see me, I see you. I know one thing we could do. We can go slow, 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 slow. I see me, I see you. I know one thing we could do. We can go slow, 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 slow. From left to right, go slow. Left to right, go slow. From left to right, go slow. From left to right, go slow. Thank you guys, thank you, thank you. Can't take the way you make me feel, the way you make the world around me stop. It's like my hands are on the wheel, pedal to the floor and I just can't let off, yeah. How do you do the things you do to me? How would do anything for you, for you. Your love has got me running like a bandit, prisoner to your love, girl. Can't stand it, caught you with my heart, red-handed, red-handed. Felony love, crimes of passion, lost control. Felony love, all my judgments overthrown. Captive by the thoughts I can't let go. Confessions of a love-drunk criminal. Felony love, crimes of passion, passion, passion. This ain't what it's supposed to be. what it's supposed to feel like. I've been thinking lately, I've been thinking maybe, shouldn't we both be free? You wanted more than me, yeah. I was in way too deep, yeah, too deep, yeah. Your love has got me running like a bandit, prisoner to your love, girl. Can't stand it. Caught you with my heart, red-handed, 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 red-handed. Felony love, felony love, girl.
Crimes of passion lost control.
Crimes of passion. Whoa,
All my tries lost
whoa. Felony love. Crimes of passion lost control. Felony love. Felony love. Crimes of passion lost control. Felony love. Crimes of passion, passion, passion. Passionate from miles away. Passive with the things you say. Passing up on my own ways. I can't blame you, no. 2, 3, 4. The song is called Passion Fruit. It's written by Drake. I didn't write this one. Listen, seeing you got ritualistic, cleansing my soul of addiction for now, 'cause I'm falling apart. Tension between us just like picket fences. You got issues that I won't mention for now, 'cause we're falling apart. Passionate from miles away, passive with the things you say, passing up on my own ways. I can't blame you, no. No, no, yeah. Passionate from miles away, passive with the things you say, passing up on my own ways. I can't blame you, no. No, no, yeah. Ooh, ooh. Tension between us just like picket fences. I think we should rule out commitment for now. We're falling apart. Leaving, you're just doing that to get even. Don't pick up the pieces, they're falling apart. Yeah, they're falling apart. Yeah. Passionate from miles away, passive with the things you say, passing up on my own ways. I can't blame you, no. No, no, yeah. Passionate from miles away, passive with the things you say, passing up on my own ways. I can't blame you, no. No, no, yeah. watching it from miles away, passive with the things you say, passing up on my own ways. I can't blame you, no. Thank you, guys.
While I was working on my PhD back in 2005, I had the opportunity to pick up a guest speaker from the airport, Dr. Steven Schneider. He was the lead author on the most comprehensive report on climate change to be written up to that time. So he gave me a little bit of trouble for picking him up in a single occupancy SUV. I probably should have seen that one coming, I guess. And I knew he was right, but I rationalized it by telling myself, I'm just one person. This is a big systemic problem that we have to fix. But he gave a phenomenal talk. It really changed the arc of my career. Up to that point, I'd just been studying earth sciences. And he convinced me that to solve society's most pressing problems, we have to be studying human and natural systems as integrated parts of a whole. I've been working towards that ever since. I remember the day, about 5 years later, reading that he had abruptly passed away. He had a pulmonary embolism on an airplane. And I was devastated, but I was also just struck by the profound irony that someone who dedicated his life to climate activism died doing one of the most fossil fuel intensive activities any human can do, flying. But that's just how we all thought at that point. You had to fly for research, you had to fly for meetings, you had to fly for conferences. The more successful you were, the more flying you did. And it's only recently, as I've been reflecting on my own career and the amount of travel I've done as a scientist, that I stopped and wondered, have I been living my life of a climate change denier? You ever have a moment like that where you're just gobsmacked by this realization that your behavior and your beliefs are just not as well aligned as you thought they were? Well, fast forward to 2015. President Obama was making climate a priority. The US was actively shaping the Paris Agreement. There were reasons for optimism. By 2015, we had known everything we needed to know for decades, and actually much longer than that. The first paper to describe the global warming problem was published in 1856. 1856. By an American scientist, Eunice Foote. She laid it all out, all the way back then. And certainly Al Gore updated and reminded us in gory detail in the mid-1990s. By 2015, we were swimming in oceans of data from meteorological stations all around the world. We'd collected thousands of sediment cores from lakes and ice cores from glaciers that allow us to reconstruct what past climates have been like. And they were all telling us how far outside of normal conditions we were. This is no natural cycle. We're way outside of natural conditions. We had little gadgets we could use to measure CO2 coming out of individual leaves on trees, as well as at the scale of entire cities and whole continents. And all of this information was feeding into some of the most sophisticated computer models ever created to help us predict what future climate scenarios look like. And yet, despite this mountain of information that was all pointing in the same direction and screaming at us of what a disaster we had created, in February of 2015, Jim Inhofe brought a snowball onto the floor of the US Senate as evidence that climate change was just a hoax. He brought a snowball. This was his attempt to undermine a century and a half of science. This was his response to the recent observation that 2014 had been the hottest year on record. Well, guess what? 2015 was even hotter, as was 2016 and 2017 and 2018 and 2019 and 2020. They were all hotter. Inhofe was the definition of a climate change denier, at that time. Some called these people skeptics. I don't think so. Skeptics bring substantive arguments to debate. Inhofe and the other deniers responded to all the overwhelming science by just saying, nah. And it worked. It was enough to continue to delay action. And we as a society, we just let that go. We let that go. So let's just briefly talk about our current situation. I'm sure many of you know the story. Fossil fuels continue to rise. This plot shows global energy consumption from all these different sources over the past 200 years. We've seen huge increases in fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas, just since the year 2000. If you look around and you see solar panels going up and wind farms and you feel like we've got this problem licked, I got to burst that bubble for you right now. All global renewables are represented in that thin green band there. Renewables have not offset fossil fuels in any way, shape, or form. They've only enabled growth in energy consumption. I think it's important to point out here, too, that the vast majority of these historical fossil fuel emissions were put in the air by white people, mostly in Europe and North America. And people of color are impacted disproportionately by climate change all around the world. So I don't see how we can look at this as anything other than a form of environmental racism, whether it was intentional or not. Just what does a hotter future look like? We're already starting to see hints of the severe implications to come, and we're becoming a little bit desensitized to it. More extreme weather, more floods, more droughts, more wildfire, more food and water shortages. All of these cause political, social, and economic instabilities. So we're expecting tens to hundreds of millions of climate refugees by 2050. Human suffering, ecosystems failing, instabilities that pose threats to national security for which we are precariously unprepared, according to the US military. We are in a climate emergency, and I'm using that word emergency very precisely to mean a threat that requires immediate action to avoid catastrophic outcomes. And I know a lot of you are probably thinking, but I've got 5 other emergencies going on right now. But climate change is the big one because it multiplies all of these other problems. Mental health, infectious disease, poverty, they're all multiplied, they're amplified by climate change. And so many of the impacts of climate change are irreversible. What happens from here is up to us. Every bit of fossil carbon we put in the air makes it worse and more expensive to deal with. We're out of wiggle room. We're out of time for delays and half measures. The next 5 years are critical. We must start to dramatically reduce fossil fuels starting now. So this all begs the question, what is a climate change denier in the 2020s? We still have some of these bonehead deniers that just overtly refuse to accept facts. There's no amount of information that's going to convince them. Maybe it's a defense mechanism for them. They can't handle the truth. Maybe they have a financial or political stake in our current fossil fuel economy. All we know for sure is that they're wrong and in denial of reality. Most people choose to accept facts. 60 to 70% of Americans understand climate change is happening. They're concerned about it. They believe it will harm future generations, and they think we should be taking action now. But even among these people, these good, well-intentioned people, there are still so many passive forms of climate change denial. Take, for example, what I call the VIP denier. These are very important people. Anything they do is so important that the carbon pollution they produce is justified in their opinion. This was me 5 years ago. This is why I thought it was okay to fly around the world and tell people about how bad climate change was, right? But here's the thing. We have a small, fixed, and non-negotiable amount of carbon we can put in the air before we reach critical climate thresholds. And the air doesn't care who burns it. So if I burn a bunch of fossil fuels on a flight across the country for a 2-day conference, that's fossil fuels that someone in India can't use to feed their entire family for a full year. A full year. We can all rationalize that what we do is important, but when we have a fixed amount of carbon we can put in the air, equity matters. There's also the technologist denier. Some of them will say, well, I can burn as much fossil fuels as I want, the next generation is going to solve it. Number one, we don't have that kind of time. Number two, that's our kids. That's our grandkids we're talking about. Haven't we put enough on them already? Wouldn't we rather leave them with a better world rather than bigger problems to deal with? Other technologist deniers will say, well, there's a big breakthrough right around the corner. It's going to solve all of this. All these problems are just going to go poof. Yeah, right. Anyone driving a hydrogen-powered car or have a carbon capture tower in your backyard? No. We've been talking about those technologies for decades, and they're still impractical. There will be technological advances, but we are terrible at predicting when they're going to be ready for use at scale. Reducing emissions right now buys us time for those technologies to come to fruition. There's also the offset denier. So they think, I can burn as much fossil fuels as I want now, I'm just going to pay somebody $10 to plant a tree and hope it doesn't burn down. Now don't get me wrong here. Planting trees is great. But number one, the carbon offset accounting at the global scale is pretty unreliable. Number two, more importantly, we simply cannot offset all the fossil carbon we're taking out of the ground by putting trees on Earth's surface. We literally run out of viable tree habitat pretty quickly. And third, once we bring all that fossil carbon up and put it on the surface, we have to manage it. And we all know that carbon can be locked up in a tree 1 minute and go up in smoke and be back in the air the next. The only way to keep the carbon out of the air is to keep the fossil fuels in the ground. So plant trees. I love trees. But don't use it as an excuse to burn a bunch more fossil fuels. In many ways, I feel like these offset schemes are more effective at offsetting guilt than they are at offsetting anything to do with our carbon fossil fuel pollution. Lastly, we've got the helpless bystander denier. Totally accepts the science, totally can't do anything about it. Climate change is a problem that somebody else needs to solve. In some ways, this may be the worst form of denial because it exudes inactivism, and inactivism is contagious. At this point in history, if you're just standing around doing nothing on this, you are part of the problem. See, in the 2020s, it's not just about denying the science. The much more common problem now is in denying that it's an emergency. It's about denying our own power to play a real role in actionable, I can get it done today solutions. So let me try to redefine what it is to be a climate change denier in the 2020s. I think a climate change denier at this point is anyone that has a large carbon footprint and is not working every day to reduce fossil fuel use. If you're wondering if you have a large carbon footprint, well, if you drove here today or you're watching this on a computer or you fly a couple times a year, you definitely have a large carbon footprint. Welcome to the club. Now, you can't solve it all yourself. We have a massive global system that needs to be fixed. But we have to work on it together, and we must work on it every day. So let's finish up by talking about what it means to work on it every day. So many things you can do cost nothing. Vote for science, vote for clean energy, vote for an economy in which everyone pays for what they get. Another thing we can just do is just talk about it. We need to normalize talking about climate change. Talk about our concerns, talk about solutions, speak up to those spreading misinformation. You know, we can only vote every couple of years when an election rolls around, but we can call our representatives every day, and sometimes I do. especially the local ones that are most likely to listen. A third thing we can do is just don't buy so much stuff. Right? Think of how much money I just saved you. When we're embedded in a fossil fuel intensive system, buying less stuff saves a lot of fossil fuel pollution. And when you have to buy stuff, buy from truly sustainable companies. Don't fall for the half promises and false promises and half measures. If a company says they're getting rid of plastic bags, that's great. Give them a high five. Should have done it 20 years ago. Keep going. You've only solved about 1% of the problem, right? We need the whole system to be fossil fuel free. I'm not going to go through the laundry list of things we can each do to eliminate fossil fuels. There are lots of other great TED Talks and other resources out there about climate action. This is a talk about recognizing the passive forms of climate change denial. I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to motivate you to become part of the solution every day. There's an active role for everyone to play, whether you're a chef or a server, a janitor, a teacher, a business owner, a healthcare worker, a truck driver, an artist, whether you're unemployed or retired, there's a role for you. Whatever your talents, your capacities, your means, there's a role for you to play. Find it. Ask yourself, how can I apply my talents, my power? What can I bring to bear to help solve this problem? And start today as a climate realist. Stephen Schneider taught us that we had to fix the system. And fixing the system starts with me and you. Thank you.
Imagine you've just created something, a work of art, an essay, a budget, and you're ready to share it with someone, an audience, a colleague, a family member. Your heart is beating as you anxiously await their response. Now, I've been there, as I'm sure many of you have too, and that moment is the moment for feedback. Tonight, I'd like to share with you what I have learned about the feedback loop. My nonlinear career path has informed my research and my thinking about the feedback loop. After graduating in communication and marketing, I landed a job in high tech in the late 90s. After a decade of work, which seemed more like a lifetime, I opted out to raise our beautiful 3 children. When our youngest was in 3rd grade, I pivoted and went to grad school. And now I teach future leaders at the Huntsman School of Business here at Utah State University. In art school, I wanted a challenge. And that is what I decided to do when I took on my graduate work. When I signed up, I had no prior experience, so they gave me a studio, some coursework, and a date for my first art critique. I was absolutely petrified, but I did what I knew best, and I went to work in my studio, spending hours creating and crafting something that I hoped would convey my concepts and resonate with my audience. When I showed up, I brought along smelling boxes. I was working with the idea that I would use a word and a visual and a scent. Here's a close-up of one of those boxes. You see the word purple, colored yellow, and if you got really close, you would smell lemon. But I quickly learned that my critics did not see or smell my boxes with the same intent that I had. Unfortunately, I was not prepared for feedback. I had spent all that time in my studio thinking about my perspective, but I had not prepared myself for the intense and honest critique experience. Now, I barely heard a word, and I hardly participated when my other fellow grads showed their work. Afterwards, I realized I needed to get better at receiving and giving feedback. This started me on a personal quest, which led to a professional journey that has helped me to understand the feedback loop through the critique process. The goal is to create healthy conflict. One half of the loop is the art of asking for feedback, and I have 3 working principles I'd like to share with you. The first is be brave. Now, at the Huntsman School, we call it Dare Mighty, but it's the idea that sometimes we need to put on our imaginary red cape and leap into the unknown. Now, I'm not talking about being brave in frictionless spaces like your social media feeds. Instead, think about spaces that are friction-full, like classrooms, town halls, or where you or your ideas are the minority. And I'm asking you to be brave in those spaces. Second, bring a growth mindset. Carol Dweck researches fixed and growth thinking. A fixed mindset takes feedback and beats themselves up when they don't do well, and then they stop. A growth mindset takes feedback, asks what they can do to improve, and then goes to work. During my first art critique, I was squarely in that fixed mindset. I wrongly believed that I would either wow my audience or I would fail. And that binary outlook allowed little room for my personal growth. Luckily, we can improve and rethink our process. That third principle when asking for feedback is the quest to reflect. How often do we give ourselves the space and time that we need to consider about what we've created? Peter Drucker, known as the father of business, once said, "Follow effective action with quiet reflection." During my grad school, I decided to create a feedback notebook. And during my critiques, I would hand it to a fellow grad and ask them to write down every single word that they heard. I then afterwards would jot down more ideas. This practice helped me ask for feedback that I wrote, not reacted to. Often, I would only find about 10% of the feedback worthy of consideration, but it was the heat I needed to move forward. Now, asking for feedback is one half of the loop. There is the other half of giving feedback, and I'm learning through research that we need both halves to create healthy conflict. When giving feedback, consider these 3 guiding principles. The first is be kind. Now, I'm not talking about the Emily Post be nice attitude when she told her readers to avoid all things unpleasant, or the advice that is embedded in our culture from the Freemason Code that forbade doing or saying anything offensive. They erroneously taught that airing differences did no good. But in fact, that is not kindness, but yawn-inducing, time-wasting commentary. And commentary uses words like interesting, and that has really no substance. And feedback needs heat. However, in critique, we don't focus on the person, we focus on the work. Feedback research shows us that we want candid feedback, but attitudes shift as we use the word you in that, as in, you didn't use the right color. Defenses go up, and we stop listening. Now, conflict training teaches us to use I language and to focus on how the work is being interpreted. For instance, that color conveys sadness to me. If you want to watch a fantastic critique, take a cue from my most recent pandemic Netflix binge, The Great British Baking Show. Now, Paul and Prue are both kind and focus on the product, not the person. You might hear them say something like, "The sponge hasn't risen properly," or "I can't taste any cardamom in that biscuit." Is there heat in the critique? Absolutely. Do the bakers sometimes shed tears? Yes. Are handshakes given? Rarely. But the bakers are learning and growing and improving. This leads me to the final part of giving feedback, and that is the opportunity to give support. When I finished my first critique, I was devastated. Luckily, my professors and fellow grads reached out and provided critical scaffolding to build my confidence and help me prepare for the next round. This is the benefit of a cohort. But support can be given in small doses. When Prue tells the baker, "Try taking the sponge out of the oven a little earlier next time." Or when a colleague shares with you, "I just listened to a podcast with the same idea, let me share it with you." If the critic, whether in the classroom, the boardroom, or the bedroom, offers no support, then that feedback is null. Because feedback is a give and take process. The feedback loop brought me, time and again, back to my studio. I continued to work with multiple senses and textures, creating objects that could twist and turn, placing balloons among gold leaf, and seeing a few of my pieces move across the US to the MoMA in New York and the MANA Contemporary in Chicago. In fact, you can see one of my pieces here at the Logan USU campus on the 4th floor of the Sorensen building. It's called Hello. The art of asking for and giving feedback requires being brave and being kind. Being ready to grow and focusing on the work, not the person. Reflecting and supporting. This cycle promotes healthy conflict. And as an educator, I see myself giving feedback more often than asking. But guess what? I still need both sides of the loop to challenge and refine and improve myself. This TED experience has given me a chance to ask for a lot of feedback, and I'm the better for it. Healthy conflict creates heat, and heat helps us rise to better ourselves and to better our communities. So let's turn up the heat, embrace healthy conflict, and be open to asking and giving feedback. Thank you.
What do Harry Potter, Katniss Everdeen, and Frodo all have in common with the heroes of ancient myths? What if I told you they are all variants of the same hero? Do you believe that? Joseph Campbell did. He studied myths from all over the world and published a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces, retelling dozens of stories and explaining how each represents the monomyth, or hero's journey. So, what is the hero's journey? Think of it as a cycle. The journey begins and ends in the hero's ordinary world, but the quest passes through an unfamiliar, special world. Along the way, there are some key events. Think about your favorite book or movie. Does it follow this pattern? Status quo, that's where we start. 1 o'clock. Call to adventure. The hero receives a mysterious message, an invitation, a challenge. 2 o'clock. Assistance. The hero needs some help, probably from someone older, wiser. 3 o'clock. Departure. The hero crosses the threshold from his normal, safe home and enters the special world and adventure. We're not in Kansas anymore. 4 o'clock. Trials. Being a hero is hard work. Our hero solves a riddle, slays a monster, escapes from a trap. 5 o'clock. Approach. It's time to face the biggest ordeal, the hero's worst fear. 6 o'clock. Crisis. This is the hero's darkest hour. He faces death and possibly even dies, only to be reborn. 7 o'clock. Treasure. As a result, the hero claims some treasure, special recognition, or power. 8 o'clock. Result. This can vary between stories. Do the monsters bow down before the hero, or do they chase him as he flees from the special world? 9 o'clock. Return. After all that adventure, the hero returns to his ordinary world. 10 o'clock. New life. This quest has changed the hero. He has outgrown his old life. 11 o'clock. Resolution. All the tangled plot lines get straightened out. 12 o'clock. Status quo, but upgraded to a new level. Nothing is quite the same once you're a hero. Many popular books and movies follow this ancient formula pretty closely, but let's see how well The Hunger Games fits the hero's journey template. When does Katniss Everdeen hear a call to adventure that gets the story moving? When her sister's name is called from the lottery. How about assistance? Is anyone going to help her on her adventure? Haymitch. What about departure? Does she leave her ordinary world? She gets on a train to the capital. Okay, so you get the idea. What do you have in common with Harry Potter, Katniss Everdeen, and Frodo? Well, you're human, just like them. The hero's journey myth exists in all human cultures and keeps getting updated because we humans reflect on our world through symbolic stories of our own lives. You leave your comfort zone, have an experience that transforms you, and then you recover and do it again. You don't literally slay dragons or fight Voldemort, but you face problems just as scary. Joseph Campbell said, "In the cave you fear to enter lies the treasure you seek." What is the symbolic cave you fear to enter? Auditions for the school play? Baseball tryouts? Love? Watch for this formula in books, movies, and TV shows you come across. You will certainly see it again. But also be sensitive to it in your own life. Listen for your call to adventure. Accept the challenge. Conquer your fear and claim the treasure you seek. And then do it all over again.
Well, I'm only somewhat embarrassed I forgot to take my mask off last time, so guess that kind of speaks wildly to when I prepared this, which is a little embarrassing, but, luckily I don't give a talk. Anyway, we'll now be having a brief 30-minute intermission, so please exit the concert hall. You'll then be directed by our lovely staff to the courtyard, where you'll be able to get your food and eat with your friends and family. Thank you.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk, guys. I've always wanted to make that joke. And like, yeah, it makes sense now. That's fun. Oh man. And what was that? I love you too. I don't know what you said. The song is called Honesty. She said, baby, I'm afraid to fall in love. 'Cause what if it's not reciprocated? I told her, don't rush, girl, don't you rush. It's just all a game of patience. She said, what if I dive deep? Would you come in after me? Would you share your flaws with me? Baby, no. I told her thinking is all wrong. Love will happen when it wants. No, it hurts sometimes, but don't let it go. 'Cause I want you, I want you, I want you, yeah. I want you, I want you, yeah. I want you. What if I tell you the things I've done? Would you run away from me? I told her, baby, we all got bags full of things that we don't want, but I can't unpack it for you, baby. She said, what if I dive deep? Would you come in after me? Would you share your flaws with me? Baby, no. I told her thinking is all wrong. Love will happen when it wants. No, it hurts sometimes, but don't let it go. 'Cause I want you, I want you, I want you, yeah. I want you, I want you, I want you, yeah. I want you, I want you, I want you, yeah. Thank you guys, thank you. So this next song is called Moment, and Nate, to my right, actually wrote this song. He wrote it about, was she your girlfriend at the time, or not even yet? No.
I was just really creepy.
Awkward. Now his wife, and they have two
She's my
beautiful
wife now,
children.
so it worked out, you know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You did it. Here's Moment. You've been hurt before, and you've been let down. Your heart's learned to stay safely closed. You don't believe I can love you this way, but give me some time to show you you're wrong. Let me hold your hand and see you smile and say you're mine for a little while, at least for a moment or two. If all I've been given is a few simple minutes, I will give you want to sing the second verse?
Sure.
Nate, wait.
If you only knew it, how amazing you are. With just a smile, you changed my whole world. And I could spend forever lying here in your arms and show you what it means to be loved, loved. Oh, let me hold your hand and see you smile, and say you're mine for a little while, at least for a moment or two. If all I've been given is a few simple minutes, I will give every one of them to you.
And when our time is
Our
up,
time
I'll
is
go
up.
back to sleep.
Go back to sleep,
Dreaming of being with
dreaming with you. Oh, in this whole crazy lifetime, at least I got to say that I gotta spend this moment, this one special moment. I gotta
spend this moment with you. With you, Thank you guys. Thank you. Before we get back to our event, we'll do one more song for you guys. This is another one that I didn't write, but I just love singing. It's called Tennessee Whiskey. You guys know that song? Cool. Used to spend my nights out the barroom. Liquor was the only love I know. But you rescued me from reaching for the bottom and brought me back from being too far gone. You're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey. You're as sweet as strawberry wine. You're as warm as a glass of brandy. Honey, I stay stoned on your love all the time. I look for love in all the same old places. Found the bottom of the bottle's always dry. But when you poured out your heart, I didn't waste it. 'Cause there's nothing like your love to get me high. Oh, you're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey. You're as as a glass of brandy. But honey, I stay stoned on your love all the time. You're as smooth as Tennessee whiskey. Tennessee whiskey. Tennessee whiskey. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
I want everyone to think about a park in your neighborhood that you visit most frequently on a daily basis or weekly basis. Or if you don't go to park, just a park near your home. How does the park look like? What facilities or activities do you see in that park? How does the park you just pictured in your mind look like this one? This is Lundstrom Park here in Logan, Utah. I would say a typical American named park looks very similar to this one, having huge turf grass lawn, some tall trees, winding path, altogether providing pastoral and peaceful landscape. The thing is, whether you are aware of it or not, your perception of urban parks is likely framed by 18th century English landscape painting, which is a prototype of picturesque aesthetics. In the picturesque, gardening or creating a park should be an imitation of beautiful nature, so that any human work should be concealed. The visitor should be only able to see the beautiful nature, not the works by a landscape architect. But here's the problem. How do we define beautiful nature when there are so many different versions of it, depending on where you are and where you live? Why do parks look so ubiquitous and identical across the country when the local nature is so distinctive from one another? Why do we import a certain version of beautiful nature when we build our own parks in our own city? And what's wrong with that? The problems with the imported beautiful nature in a park are multiple. For one, it is expensive. To create a peaceful haven for New Yorkers, the Central Park had cost over $14 million in mid-19th century, which was a significant increase from the original $5 million budget. It was mainly due to transform the rocky and swampy ground into smooth topography and ultimately pastoral landscape that we can see today. A recent national survey of park agencies showed that a typical named park cost $200,000 per acre to be built, excluding land price. And a major portion of the construction cost goes to grading and greening, again, to mimic the imported beautiful nature. Building a park is not the end of the story. To keep it green and give water to turf grass and non-native plants, our parks require a huge amount of water, on average $20,000 per acre every year for overall maintenance of a park. And we all know that it's not just our park, it's our suburban single-family neighborhood requiring excessive amount of water to keep its beautiful nature aesthetics. With the current pace of water usage and population growth in Utah, it's forecasted that the water demand will exceed the water supply within 20 years from now. Another problem with the important beautiful nature in a park is that it only accommodates certain types of activities. Most park agencies don't allow for graffiti, protests, nightlife, or even regular commercial activities within their parks. Since the inception of urban parks in 19th century, they had only open to like certain passive uses like walking, jogging, or picnicking. That's all. It's not open to all. Last but not least, our neighborhood parks are empty. In spite of their health, economic, environmental, social benefits that a park can provide, we are not fully enjoying them. Recently, researchers surveyed about 200 neighborhood parks across multiple US cities and found that most of them are underused. On average, there were 2 persons per acre, like this image, where cities spend $200,000 to build and another $20,000 every year to maintain. So the rest of the green space is empty, where sprinklers are running every day. As a behavior researcher, I also conducted observational studies of 30 neighborhood parks in Salt Lake area in Utah using a drone. The finding, 2.5 persons per acre, aligns with the national average. You remember 2 persons per acre? You know, Utah is quite a typical place representing this country. And of course, there are not many things we can say so. There are fewer female and even fewer seniors. This is an example of an empty park. Out of 180 observations that I made, parks were empty 26%. No single person at the time I visited there. So, what do empty parks have in common? What's the problem? Is it park itself or the surrounding community environment? And the answer is both, as you could guess. Parks were empty when they had only limited types of facilities. And second, when they were poorly maintained. So simply, it's not a fun and safe place to go. And not only its design and maintenance, parks were also empty when they were located in a single-family residential neighborhood. And second, when they were only accessible by car, not by walk, by bike, or public transit like buses. Jane Jacobs, one of the most influential urban theorists, said that too much is expected of city parks. So we should not simply assume that putting a new grassland can complete our neighborhood. If you build it, they may not come, even including yourself. So knowing that problems, you may wonder what popular parks, what successful parks have in common. What should we do? And before answering that question, let me share some numbers. Is 2 persons per acre typical in any parks in any countries? No, sadly, that's not the case. You may know that if you have traveled abroad or if you're watching this talk outside of the United States, like my family members who may be watching this live broadcast in Korea. The user density of neighborhood parks in other countries range from triple to over 10-folds of that in the United States, even including Brazil and Canada, whose nationwide population density is lower than this country. In essence, I found that successful neighborhood parks have 3 characteristics: salience, intricacy, and accessibility. Salience means that there are some memorable, unique, and distinctive features in a park. Have you heard of the word Instagrammable or Instagram-worthy? So Salient Park is Instagram-worthy, like attractive enough for photographing and posting on a social media. Salience can be also achieved by embracing the natural landscape around the park, again, to make the place memorable, unique, not identical or ubiquitous. Another feature of successful neighborhood park is intricacy, or you can call it complexity, accommodating multiple types of activities and providing rich user experiences, not just passive ones. An example of a neighborhood park in Greece providing rich user experiences through workout equipment. And outside of the park, parks with visitors throughout the day and throughout the week have different types of uses around the park, not just residential. There are grocery stores, schools, libraries, apartments, all together providing the intricacy in the built environment. And they are easily accessible on foot. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed many things in our cities, mostly in negative ways. But it has renewed our interest in parks, trails, and walkable outdoor environments, because we need a place to relax, exercise, socialize, while maintaining some physical distance with others. So more than ever, we need a different approach. Do we really need identical parks, identical neighborhood everywhere that is expensive, unsustainable, inaccessible, and above all, empty most of the time? Instead, for example, you can attend a public meeting and speak up that we need different parks, different neighborhoods that is salient, intricate, and accessible. Also, you can begin with a small change with your own park. I'm talking about your front yard, backyard, or balcony, by using native plants and using some water-saving strategies. The beautiful nature might be something that already exists in and around your town, not necessarily the one from the English countryside painting. Then we'll have a place that is used and loved. Again, I want you to reimagine a park in your neighborhood. Thank you.
The 21st century is defined by wicked problems. Wicked problems are composed of multiple stakeholders with conflicting agendas and outcomes that have the potential for existential impact. Wicked problems aren't just complicated, they are complex. Complexity is defined as an environment in which you have diverse, willful actors who are both interconnected and interdependent. A small ripple in one part of the system can have outsized impacts across the other parts. Because actors, including malicious actors, are adaptable and willful, what works to confront threats today may not work tomorrow. This complex environment also includes convergence. Convergence of brand new variables, advances in data science, the algorithms that run and track our digital lives, in artificial intelligence, in cyber smarts and cyber hacking, and these are converging with advances in bioengineering, some of them aimed at the human form, and the dangerous shifts in the climate of our planet, in addition to the risky congestion of space debris traveling the same orbit as our most critical satellites. In order to address the multifaceted complexity of 21st century problem sets, we must have teams of problem solvers that are equal in their dynamism, sophistication, and diversity. In order to build those, we need an evolution in higher education. Training in one major equips students to deal with difficult, even complicated problems within one sphere. It doesn't train them to think dynamically across problem sets. It doesn't equip them to deal with complexity and convergence. and it doesn't prepare them to think strategically about the most pressing problem sets of our day. General education courses are the right first step, but students need cross-training after acquiring some expertise in their own majors, and they need the opportunity to apply an interdisciplinary problem set to real-world problems. This is the grand experiment that we have been embarking on. Utah State University has the first in the nation Center for Anticipatory Intelligence. Students are recruited from all across campus: aerospace engineers and art historians, biologists, computer engineers, data scientists, electrical engineers, philosophers, global communications majors, international relations majors, mechanical engineers, soil scientists. All of them converge in a classroom made up of 35 different majors, combining to produce powerful problem-solving teams and blossoming for us in our Chi cohort the dynamism that we seek. As juniors or brand new grad students or seniors, they enter a mix with PhD students, working professionals, all in the same classroom, fusing their expertise to tackle wicked problem sets. Every week, we toss at them the toughest issues humanity is facing, the ones making the news and the ones not yet making the news. I don't know if it will make you smile or wince to know that 3 months before the pandemic hit, one of our students completed a paper on a zoonotic novel virus creating a worldwide pandemic. His classmate completed a paper looking at our medical supply system and the choke points that would prove problematic in a regional or global crisis. Now, these students were celebrated as prophets in their own time and interviewed on the radio. And as I tell most observers to our program, you better hope that not all Chi students are prophets in their own time. And don't predict the events of 2021, because I've got a paper on a solar flare wiping out the electrical grid for 6 months, one on cyber hacking of the Air Force's vaunted F-35, and at least 3 on CRISPR technology or the melting of permafrost producing the next biological weapon. And that's just a few of them. So the point of threat analysis is not to predict with laser accuracy the exact time or place of the next emergent threat, but rather to image through multiple plausible scenarios that could emerge based on the convergence in our complex landscape, and then design strategies of resilience to deal with them. We defined resilience as the ability of either material systems or humans to take a blow and bounce back while still maintaining core integrity and function. Even better, to receive a blow, learn from it, and emerge in better form. We anticipate threats so that we can be more resilient in the face of them. There's no sense seeing threats coming if you're not going to project their impact and use the time it buys you to build resilience in the infrastructure of your own society and in the people around you. Part of the brilliance of an interdisciplinary cohort is the innovation that it produces. We built this resilience framework by crowdsourcing ideas from our own students. They reached into their own majors and beyond to collect material surrounding resilience. We then amassed that material and looked for patterns of robust concepts that proved sound and useful when applied to either material systems or the human governance over those systems. The result is this complex resilience framework that our students use to strategize and think through the ways in which we can prepare for and confront even monumental threats. When we started this interdisciplinary experiment, we expected better problem-solving outcomes. Our teaching team has significant collective experience across the intelligence community and national security industry. We knew strong interdisciplinary teams was the right move, an essential move in higher education. So we expected the better problem solving. What we didn't expect was the love. We thought that bringing together students of really diverse backgrounds, diverse ages, diverse life experience, and diverse thinking sets and problem-solving skills, and putting them in one classroom was going to be awkward, and awkward for a while. As my co-founder Matt Barrett likes to say, it would be like showing up to a family reunion, but it's not your family. We were wrong. Something pretty magical happened. Because the wicked problem sets these students are forced to tackle, they see nearly immediately the value of the diverse experience that each brings to the table. Looking at the complexity of the 21st century landscape, they recognize their own deficits and know that they can't solve the problems alone. They are thrilled to lean on the expertise of their peers. Rather than feeling competitive with peers that think like them and were trained like them, they experience gratitude and connection to partners who bring something entirely different to the table. They need each other, and they know it. It's their diversity that creates unity. Across the year the students spend together in a Chi cohort, we watch what begins as mutual respect develop into genuine affection. They know they are smarter, more effective, more prescient together. By fusing expertise, they become much more powerful than the sum of their parts. But perhaps most importantly, they build community. They are living the very resilience they mean to convey to others. In the middle of what seemed to be the toughest stretch of the pandemic last fall, we asked one student how she was doing. Her response, "I am thriving." She recognizes herself as a valuable and critical contributor to a team. She knows her value and she loves her team. We knew that combining intellectual forces would create problem solvers. I'm not sure we knew that it would create joy. The benefits of an intentionally interdisciplinary education in anticipating our most important challenges in this 21st century and creating a highly resilient community that is bound by genuine affection, it's not just nice. It's the necessary ingredient to bounce back from massive disruptions, to effectively confront malicious attacks, to heal the planet, and to heal our communities. It's time for an evolution in higher education. Thank you.
I tried to think of another TED Talk joke, but I couldn't come up with any. So we're going to do 2 more songs for you guys this evening. Hopefully you have enjoyed yourselves so far. Can we get a round of applause for our speakers that have gone so far? These last 2 songs, well, the very last one is my first song that I released as an independent artist, Closer. And this song is weight in gold. Black dust in orbit cascades down like a parachute. Breaks on my shoulders. This gravity hurts when you know the truth. Well, I'm pulling my weight in gold. Well, call me anxious, call me broke, but I can't live this on my own. I'm pulling my weight in gold now. Well, call me anxious, call me broke, but I can't live this on my own. We dreamt like martyrs. I never thought I was bold enough. Oh no, no. You pushed me further. And I take the blame for the both of us. I'm pulling my weight in gold. Well, call me anxious, call me broke, but I can't live this on my own. I'm pulling my weight in gold. Well, call me anxious, call me broke, but I can't live this on my own. Oh, universe, hold me up. Tried your best, is it ever enough? No, no, no. When it's already dragging me down, down.
I'm pulling my weight in gold. Well, call me anxious, call me
broke.
Can't live this on my own. I'm pulling my weight, brother. In gold. Oh, no, no. Call me anxious, call me broke.
Call me broke.
I can't live this on my own.
No. Thank you, guys. Thank you. My name is Jay Warren. I've had a great time being with you guys this evening. This is Nate Waite, and this last song is called Closer. How could I expect you to wait for me like lovers do when I wasn't there for you? And why did I expect the truth? I never gave that to you. No, you needed more than me. I couldn't be the one you loved. I couldn't feel, but I could touch. You needed more. I needed you close. You needed me closer, but I couldn't hold you. You needed me close. put you through. I'm sorry for all I do. You needed me close. Oh, you needed me closer. I could give you all I am. You'd still need a better man. I hope that you'll understand. And I would offer all I have to be there to hold your hand. But you needed more than me. I couldn't be the one you loved. I couldn't feel, but I could touch. You needed more. I needed you close. You needed me closer, but I couldn't hold ya. You needed me close. All that I put you through. I'm sorry for all I do. You needed me close. Oh, you needed me closer. You needed me close. You needed me close. Oh, you needed me closer. You needed me close. Thank you.
I spent a lot of my childhood in the back seat of a car, driving the 6-hour stretch of I-10 between my home in Texas and my family in Louisiana. And of course, in the pre-iPad days, my only source of entertainment was looking out the window. And as a little kid, you can really only see like telephone poles and billboards and flags. That drive is as flat as it is boring. But there are two major visual changes that you will notice as a child. First of all of the billboards suddenly become about casinos as you get close to Louisiana, so you know you're close. But then the big one, and the one that fascinated me as a kid, and the one that I'm still fascinated by to this day, was the flags. Because in Texas, there are a lot of flags. More Texas flags than United States ones usually. But then as you cross the Sabine River Bridge over into Louisiana, you just stop seeing flags altogether. Certainly not Louisiana ones. I'd get to my family's home, and they didn't fly Louisiana flags either. So I kind of grew up wondering, are they just like not proud to be from Louisiana? And that's not the case. They think Louisiana is the greatest place in the country. They've never been to Utah, right? I like to think that this monotonous back and forth drive really shaped me as a person because I grew up, I became a designer, but I also became a vexillologist, a researcher of flags, and a vexillographer when you put those together, a designer of flags. So at Texas A&M, where I work and where I live, I gave a TED Talk about a year ago about flags. That's why I was invited here today. And in it, I started with a quote. And I'm going to start with that same quote, but then today I'm going to take it a completely different place. So Wally Allens, he's the father of what we call nation branding. And what he said was, people want to belong, and then they want to display symbols of belonging. We all feel this. Everyone wants to be part of a tribe, whether that's your family unit or your church or sports team, whatever it may be. But I'm fascinated by the second part. As a designer, I'm like, why do we choose these symbols to display our belonging? What makes them good or bad? So, in the next few minutes, we're going to be talking about the relationship between three things: personal identity, flags, and sports brands. Now, unless you're a professional athlete, it would be a bit weird for you to have your own personal logo, right? And I can almost guarantee that no one in this room or anybody watching has their own personal flag that they fly outside of their house. That would be weird even for me, okay? Instead, most of us, we use existing symbols and we adopt them as part of who we are. But more importantly, we adopt them because we want to display them and get people to perceive us in a certain way. They are communication. Design is communication. That's what separates design and art. Design can be successful or unsuccessful. But a lot of people don't make that connection that flags are design. Flags can be successful, they can be well adopted and used and recognized, and they can be unsuccessful when the tribe doesn't want to display them as symbols of belonging, because usually they're pretty ugly or something. So after years of childhood backseat boredom, I've traveled the country myself. I've gotten to see how lots of states display their pride and belonging. And I've come up with this theory. It's simple to understand. I call it the pride funnel. Basically, you take the largest tribe, the nation, and you work your way down to the smaller and smaller sub-tribes. And someone's personal identity usually flows in this pattern as well. To illustrate this, we'll make up a fake person. We'll call him Dan. Dan lives in Denver, Colorado. He's a Colorado Avalanche fan. But, that's not core to who Dan is. You know Dan. If the Avalanche lose a few times, have some losing seasons, he might just stop liking hockey. That's fine. But he's always proud to be from Denver. He can't change that about himself. And he's proud to be from Colorado, more than that, because Colorado's got some great things outside of Denver. And then, of course, all of us can relate, when there's like a World Cup or a war, no matter what state you're from, we unite as a nation, as the larger tribe. So this is easy to understand. But I'm fascinated by that second part. How do flags fit into this and either flow correctly or completely mess this whole thing up? So these are some well-designed flags. Not just because they follow the rules of flag design. Most of you could name every single one of these. But they're successful because they also flow down the pride funnel. So the sports teams in those states, they adopt some of the symbolism and colors of those states. And why? Because there's embedded emotional attachment to those state flags, and the teams can utilize that. That can increase fan loyalty and ticket sales and merch, etc. So let's use the Colorado Avalanche again. They're my favorite hockey team. I don't know if y'all figured that out yet. So when they started, they didn't really have any Colorado symbolism in their stuff. But see, they had this weird foot on their shoulder, and they changed that to the Colorado Sea over time. And now they have full-on alternate uniforms that are Colorado-themed, like the hat I'm wearing today. Nowhere is this calling to state symbolism more important than in college sports where I work. Because in college, you are competing against other universities for fans and for recruits. So being the premier team in your state is super important. This here on the left, this is Texas Tech. They use the Texas flag on their uniforms. Now, I said, I'm from Texas. I'm fighting Texas Aggie, the other type of Aggies. And when I see this, I have a positive feeling because I like the Texas flag, but I feel weird rooting against Texas Tech in this situation, though I always will. Right? Indiana here. Indiana, they're recruiting against Purdue and Notre Dame, and so they want to be Indiana's team. So they put Indiana's flag on their helmet sometimes. And of course, their name is the Hoosiers. They take the whole state's demonym and they make it their team nickname. And then, of course, Maryland. Love it or hate it, they use their state flag on their uniforms more than really anybody. I like it. I'm a flag nerd. I can understand why people don't. But you see, some schools, they just can't do this, even if they tried. Here's Oregon, the Oregon Ducks. Doesn't look like Oregon, because it's a throwback uniform. It's cool. But the thing that doesn't work here is not the uniform. It's great. It's the flag. The flag of Oregon does not translate, does not communicate what it needs to. In fact, I would argue that the Oregon Ducks logo, or the state shape of Oregon, they're more identifiable symbols of Oregon than the flag itself. Some teams will even go as far as to redesign their state flag just to fix this problem. When the Florida Panthers rebranded, they just went ahead and fixed Florida's flag as well. They took the seal out and they threw in a sun for the Sunshine State. I like this. I think this is a great Florida flag. But by far the most common case we see is whenever there's a bad flag at the state or the city level or both, these passionate citizens, they want to belong. They want to display symbols of belonging. So they will go down the pride funnel, they'll grab something from the team level, a logo, a color, whatever, they'll bring it up with them, and this team will fill this identity void that is left, like here in Los Angeles. But by far the biggest example of this is New York City. New York City's flag is terrible. Most of you have never seen it before. That's crazy. The flag of New York State's even worse. So if I'm a passionate New Yorker and I want to get a tattoo, what would I get? I could go to the Yankees logo, I Heart New York, Statue of Liberty, Big Apple, Skyline. There's so many things, but there's not that one thing. Like Chicago, for instance. Everybody's got a Chicago flag tattoo. I'm surprised I don't have a Chicago flag tattoo. But so what? What are these states losing? Are they losing anything by not having a good flag? Well, they're not losing anything that governments really care about, that's for sure. Because unlike a sports team, you don't pay your taxes based on how much you identify with or like your state. Though I think that would be a pretty cool tax policy. No, these politicians, they're not going to go out of their way through the bureaucracy and the red tape to fix even the ugliest state flag because it just doesn't benefit them that much. And for the public, it's usually a flag design contest and they want to get everybody's opinions. You submit something, yours doesn't get picked, obviously. Then they start piecemealing them all together, taking the best things from everybody's, and it becomes this sort of Frankenstein thing that's certainly different, but not better. So why am I saying all this? Well, it's because I did something about it. So during the pandemic, I started a flag company, Flags for Good, and I just went ahead and did the thing that my childhood self would want me to do, and I just started redesigning all the U.S. state flags that I didn't like. And I wanted to show you some of them. So this is Colorado. We've already established great flag. I give it an A-. There's one thing that bugs me really bad about this one, and it's the little tips of the C. Why are they not touching that white line? So I just went ahead and fixed it. And print this, and now design-conscious Coloradans can go and fly this anytime they want. Oklahoma. This has some potential. This indigenous shield's really cool. It needs to be simplified. The words need to leave. But what's cool about Oklahoma is at the city level, they actually have a great flag. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, they have this beautiful flag. They've already rendered this indigenous shield in a very simple and elegant way. So in an example of good design going up the pride funnel, we'll take that, we'll throw in some historical flags of Oklahoma, and I think we've got a better Oklahoma flag here. No legislature needed. People can just go fly this right now. Louisiana. You know, there's so much culture, so much color, so much history in Louisiana. This current flag doesn't show any of that. And so I started with purple. Purple is a color that is not used in flag design very much, so I thought that was cool. I did a gold fly edge, so it flaps in the wind, and I threw a fleur-de-lis on there. Better flag of Louisiana. And of course, I gave some to my family so they could finally display their Louisiana pride. But I wanted to end with Utah. I'm honored to be invited here to speak. I love Utah. I come here as much as I can. And I wanted to get this one right. There's actually been some current talk about redesigning the Utah flag. In fact, yesterday, some legislation got passed, so there is progress. And that's great, because Utah has so much to draw from. But even like your NBA team has a name left over from when they were in New Orleans where jazz made a heck of a lot more sense. So, to redesign Utah's flag, I started with some of my experiences here. I started with this red earth, this iconic red earth. And out of the earth comes 5 white peaks. White for salt, for the purity of heart here, and for the best snow on earth. And then, instead of the beehive, I departed a little bit from that, which could be controversial, but I went with a honeycomb, a golden honeycomb. It's the product of the beehive, and it's a more elegant shape, easier to use in different applications. So, this state, Utah, deserves a flag where Utahns can be proud to show their belonging to this wonderful place. And this isn't just to benefit like souvenir shops or so you guys can have cool stickers for your snowboards, which all of you should have gotten in your welcome packets, right? But no, as we've seen, states with well-designed flags, they don't necessarily have more state pride, but they do own their visual story. Their visual identity is not tied up in a sports team or whatever else. I'm not saying that this needs to be the final flag of Utah. I'm not. But I am saying, but I do hope that by making these better state flags and putting them out into the world, it sparks conversation from the public and politicians alike to come together and want something more, want something better. Thanks.
Was 10 seconds away from walking out with my mask on again, so I don't know, I'm too used to it. You know, the whole point of TEDx events is to uncover the new ideas, the new art, the new research that's bubbling up in our communities. But oftentimes, I think when we live in small towns like Logan, we don't think we have much to share. We think bigger cities like Boston, New York, DC, Seattle, they have the real stuff, right? What could Logan offer? We're too small. Now, one of the main things I hope you take home with you tonight is just how wrong that is, how false that mindset is. I used to think like that before I got to work with all these great speakers. Instead, I want you to go home and remember that no matter what your community is, no matter the size, what it looks like, where it is, there are people in it who have something to share, something significant. They're positively impacting the world in significant ways. Now, in my somewhat biased opinion as the organizer, I think this was a terrific resurgence of TEDx USU. And, well, yes, thank you. But none of this could have happened with just me. It happened with all the technical crew, the speakers, the ideas. None of these ideas were mine. I just told people where to put the rug. Kind of. They did it for me. I came and now looks like a good spot for the rug. So one of the most important things, though, is you all. You came out here. You came out here tonight to listen to these ideas. And I thank you. You made tonight terrific. You were part of the reason why tonight was so successful. So thank you. I hope you all travel home safely, and I hope you enjoyed yourself tonight.